Well, this is going to be a hard video to make and talk about, but it's something that I really want to talk about because it affects me deeply, and I know it affects many other people out there, millions of people, maybe even billions of people. No, it does affect absolutely every single person, and that is mental health. So for those of you that probably know me, and those of you that don't, I make YouTube videos here. I've also been quite a big advocate for mental health and neurodiversities on my Instagram account. Now, I have spoken about mental health as well in my videos, occasionally at times, just little things here and there, but I wanted to make a dedicated video to it. So this is probably what you're used to seeing, me out on location, but there's a side to me that you don't see, and that is what I want to talk to you today about. So today we are doing this video in black and white because it's going to work so well for when it comes to me telling about my story. And it's not a dark story, well it is at times, and I know it's going to also trigger people. I know it's also going to touch people's hearts. I know it's going to touch people's nerves on all different levels. I am going to be very open with this. I am going to be talking about suicide attempts. I am going to be talking about self-harm and depression, anxiety and social isolation, and people being mean to me, people just wording me as a certain thing because it was the easiest way for them to analyse the situation and move on. So for this video, my mum has gone through a load of photographs in her albums that I asked her to provide me for this video. So that will give you a visual representation, because I realise I have got dyslexia, because I see things in a visual form. When someone tells me about something, I put a picture together in my head as if it was real life, and I start to fill in those blanks and I start to see a story. I'm a visual thinker, I'm a hands-on person. I don't learn the conventional way, and I don't think the conventional way. So that's the reason why I'm giving you some photos. So that will give you the added context to the story of my life. So some of the photos, the faces will be blurred out. The only faces I will not blur out is my dad and my mum. My sister, family and friends will all be blurred out for confidential reasons. Now, I know this will upset a lot of people, mainly my family and probably some of my friends and people that maybe follow me, I don't know, but I know this will touch a nerve with a lot of people. But it will also open up a lot of hearts, and it will also be something that I will plan on using for many years to help tell my story and help other people as well as I go forth, because at the end of this you will find out why I am doing this in more detail. So let's rewind to when I was a kid. Before I started pre-primary, I loved life. I went out in the garden, I was playing with my toys, I was riding my bike, going out for walks with my family. I remember there's actually a photo of me, I can't remember what age, maybe I was 2 or 3, with boots on. I was leaning on the railing, and if you look at my left foot that actually rests on my right foot, I still do that exact same posture to this day. The only thing that's changed with me is I've got a little bit taller, a bit fatter, and I've lost my hair, but I've somehow migrated it down here. I had fun in those days. I would go out and go for walks. We would go to museums, and I would just be fascinated by the world around me. It just made sense to me, and it was just an awe. But when things really took a change for me is when school started, pre-primary, at the age of 4 here in England. Now, I moved around a lot as a kid as well, so that didn't make my life easy, but it also allowed me to actually just step away from difficult situations and then move somewhere different, and then it wouldn't be so difficult that long, because then we'd go on to another place. And the reason why we moved around a lot when I was a kid is because of my dad. Not because of his work, it was because of his attitude, of his what was a way to portray him? Negativity, and his no thought about anyone else apart from himself. And my mum went through some pretty bad patches, and he used her, and other people used her as well, which is a real shame, and I will go into that in this video. She shared some things with me which she hasn't shared with anyone else, and I want to divulge some of those in this story as well. So yeah, when I started school, I remember going to pre-primary and this school in Weymouth, I remember walking in and it was just like, I look around the room and I'm going, I don't like this environment. I don't, it's noisy, it's bright, there's lines and textures and lighting patterns which didn't work for me, and the senses to my nose and everything, and then also then I had to find out that I had to actually participate with other kids. I was someone who wanted to be in his own world and go about his life in a certain way, but as soon as school was forced upon me, and then my mum had to go to work and do, adult things, then I was having to be looked after by the school. And I think there is a problem with school and education that doesn't work for people like myself and many others out there, where, school is something that is forced upon our parents and forced upon us, that we must do it. If we don't but do it, we are punished. There are fines. There are prison sentences issued. So if a kid is struggling at school, why remain there? Why not have other solutions, other foundations that start up? Maybe I might start up those foundations. Maybe I might try and do something with Richard Branson and other people to make something that helps people like myself who are young and who are struggling and actually live the best life they can live away from the current school education system, which has been the same basically for a number of years, and also the way that most teachers talk to students and deal with students. I hear it so often. And going back to those years, so yeah, when I got back into pre-primary and going to these things and getting involved with students, and I didn't want to be there. I wanted to be outside. And the only time I felt myself was when lunch and recess or morning tea or whatever it was. I can't remember what it was in England, what they called it. I think it was playtime. And I had fun. I used to lie down on the grass and look up at the sky and watch the clouds and watch the planes go by and the birds, and play with the grass and and all the little weeds, and watch the bugs walking along and just being amazed by it. But the things that I didn't understand were humans. I felt alienated by them. I didn't feel like I was one of them. I felt extremely alienated that I had to blend in with these people that I didn't get. They didn't get me. So what do I do? And I had these ideas and these thoughts when I was 4 and 5. I knew that I never belonged anywhere. And I've said this in the past as well. When it comes to me looking at society, I see myself on the edge of a crater, and everything that it consists in this world and this universe happens in there. I'm sitting on the rim of it looking in going, I don't understand any of this. And those who are also suffering like myself, how are we meant to hear our voice when we seem to get shunned under? We seem to be labelled as underachievers, as people who are maybe troublemakers. I got into trouble so much at school. It's unbelievable. And the reason why I got in trouble at school is because I struggled with my learning. I struggled to fit. I didn't fit in. And I used to black out as well, and it was very frustrating. And this is what led me down the route of self-harming. I started self-harming, I think, at the age of 6 and 7. I would hit myself. I would cause myself to have injuries. I would chuck myself out of a tree and landing on a rock on my back, and then I ended up walking home, throwing myself downstairs just to feel something. And it was my way of, I don't know. It wasn't an expression. I wasn't expecting anyone to care for me. I wasn't expecting anyone to feel sympathy for me. I was trying to do it so I could feel something, because I didn't feel anything. I just felt empty and so isolated, even as I got older and my family got older. And I felt like I was, because when I started having problems at school, my sister was the angel child. And I remember going back to home on this particular day, and I'd done it on many occasions, I would come out of my room. My mum would think that I was asleep in bed, because she would just tuck me and my sister in. My sister had her own room, I had my own room. I had my bunk bed, and I would climb out of that, be very quiet, open the door very quietly, walk across the landing and sit at the top stairs, and I would eavesdrop on my mother sharing about me to her sisters, saying I was in trouble again, he's been so naughty, I don't know what I'm going to do with him, I don't know how to, you know, I can't remember, I think it was I don't know what to do with him. That was just making her distraught and so unhappy. And then there was me at the top of these stairs. She had no idea. And then it was like, what do? I don't know what to do. I was upset. I'm hurting my mum. I'm making her life hell. And I started to cry. I'm actually starting to tear up a little bit now just thinking about it. And then that's when I tried to escalate things to more self-harm. I actually tried to take my life from that point going forth. I think at the age of 6, I tried to jump out my bedroom window in Hampden Park in Eastbourne. I remember, but the window was so high, and I remember having a load of plants in my room because I was fascinated by plants. I was following Alan Titchmarsh and ground force, and I was really fascinated by that. A 7 or 8 year old fascinated by ground force and going, I want to be a gardener one day. And I had about 80 plants in my bedroom. It was just insane. I had plants everywhere. I had from small plants, cactuses, to big plants, and it was like a jungle in my room. And I had propagators on my windowsill. Anyway, I removed the propagators from my windowsill, and I opened the window, and I tried to jump out the window. I really tried to jump out, but I couldn't. I couldn't, because I wasn't tall enough. I couldn't get the height I needed to get out, even with me pushing things in front of the window to do so. I tried to climb on the radiator, but that was hot, so I think that's the reason why I stopped. And then when I was at school, I remember this one day, everyone was out playing in the playground. The school, the doors would be open, so students could come in and out, I think grab their lunch and stuff. And I remember on this one particular day, I went to the top floor, the second story, or the first level. So you've got ground floor and then the first level. I remember going into my classroom. I remember grabbing a chair. I remember taking that to the window, opening that window, and going, all right, let's die. Let's take my life now. And I got up onto the chair. The teachers were in their staff room, they were away, they weren't anywhere near me. This is the day before cameras as well, so they had no idea what was going on. I grabbed the chair, and all the other kids were out playing on the big oval, so this part of the school, there's no one there. And I opened the window, got on the chair, and I was about to go, and I was going, what if I mess up the landing? What when I fall through the air, I land on my legs, or I land on my back and I don't land on my head? What if I mess up when I try and get out the window? Do I catch myself and I actually survive this? I thought that at the age of 7. And I went, I'll stop and I'll have another go another time. I closed the window, got down off the chair, and I put the chair back in the classroom. I remember back in the classroom as well, during class, I would self-harm a lot. They would probably call it acting out. And what I would be doing is I would be banging my head against the desk, going, I don't want to be here, don't want to be here, don't even want to be here, and banging my head. And I don't mean small bangs, I mean freaking big bangs. And because I just don't want to be there, and I wanted to just knock myself out, basically, I think, is the best way to describe it. And I would just the teachers would restrain me, and then my mum would get called, and then she would have to come and pick me up, and I took her away from work, and I knew how bad that would make her feel, because she needed the money, and I was, taking money away because she wasn't able to do the work that she needed to do, and it didn't put her in a good light with her employers. It didn't put her in good light with the school and other parents and everything that was going on, because I was struggling and I was needing help but I had no idea about how to ask for help, and yeah, I didn't know what to do. But when you get to a certain level, it seems that people just go, oh, we'll label him as a troubled child. We don't want to deal with him. He's too much of a handful. I had so many friends though, and there was one birthday party. So I had a lot of girls that liked me when I was at school. I think because of my generosity. I was the person I am today back then. I've always been the person I am today, caring for others, wanting to look after others, and putting others ahead of myself. So there was this party I'd done, it was my birthday. I had a load of money given to me. I think it was about 80 or 90 pounds at the end of the day, maybe more, from family, friends, and acquaintances, I guess. And we went to the bowling alley, and there was an arcade, and as we finished bowling, everyone from school, didn't have much. Some of my friends didn't have much money either. They were all playing, and then they ran out of money. I went, I'll be back. I went and gave some of my money, got some tokens, and brought it back and allowed my friends to play within the arcade. There must have been about 30 or 40 of my friends there. They ended up playing for, I don't know, maybe an hour or two, and at the end of it, I looked at my wallet. I had a Mr. Blobby purse. I opened it up, and I only had £5 left in it. I was going, oh, all my money's gone. And I was just like, oh, I could have spent that on sweets and bought myself some toys. And on reflection, I was going, I wouldn't change that for the world, because my friends were able to enjoy their time by playing on these games, and I just felt I loved that, and I love seeing other people flourish and other people having fun. It brings me great joy, and that's something that I'm going to be doing leading forward from here, by the way. My aunties, I'll call them E, is one of them. She lives in Eastbourne, and M, she lives in London. They've never got me. They always just labelled me as stupid, or I'm not achieving what I should be doing, and just naughty. And my auntie M, she's nice. She was always there for me and always wanting to play and everything. My auntie E, she said, as soon as I think I met her, she said, I don't like boys and I don't like you. And I went, oh, that's great. Well, I haven't said that I don't like you, so I'll try and be friendly. But she always sneered at me. She was very rude. She's got a son who she said on multiple occasions that he was an accident. And actually on one occasion, when my mum was young, my auntie E actually stole my mum's pocket money and money that she'd been saving up and put it towards, I think, smokes or something. And then my mum had been staying over there. Pocket money or something, maybe it was later on in age, but I remember my mum telling me this, and the only thing that my mum was able to eat was baby food. That's all they could live off, was baby food and jam sandwiches. That was it, nothing else. How miserable is that person? Pretty sure my auntie is a narcissistic person, because it's never her fault. She never takes responsibility for herself. It's always other people, and she always plays the victim card. Thankfully now, she is out of my life. She is out of my mum's life. My auntie M is now out of my life because of a situation that took place this year, where I just, I went through a rough time and she wasn't there for me. I told her about it and she just went quiet. So yeah, it wasn't good. My aunties have never been that supportive for me. They try and say they have, but they just don't understand. And one is mean, and one just isn't open to other points of view, other walks of life, and struggles trying to get across depression and anxiety and everything. She's just not having any of it. She's always about, I've tried to explain things to her. She just goes, it's just like a blank face. I feel like I'm talking to a wall. Going back, so yeah, I deeply care for others, and I want others to succeed. I want others to feel like a sense of belonging and flourish. In 2010, after my birthday, I knew I was going to go to high school. This is in England. And I knew that I was going to get beaten up when I went to high school, because there were people from the school that I was previously at, or the school I was at, and then I was going to go to high school. I was told that I was going to get beaten up when I got there. And I remember going around there for an induction day to high school, and my gosh, the world that was, I was going, I don't like it here. I don't want to be here. What am I going to do? What can I do that can not cause me to be here? I think we were watching some movies or some old video footage, and on a rainy day in Eastbourne, with my mum and my sister, our life in Australia, and I went to my mum and said, "Can we move to Australia?" Oh yeah, by the way, I forgot on a big thing. In 1997, I forgot about this moment. My mum divorced my dad because my dad had an affair with another woman, and that other woman also was married to another bloke. So these two people were having an affair with both of their partners. My mum was able to find out that my dad was having an affair because of some cat fur or some pet fur on the clothing, and I'm pretty sure, yeah, something about that. And also one time I also told my mum that I saw my dad kissing this lady on the doorstep, and I thought at that point, when I told her, and then Dad was no longer part of my life anymore, that I had ended my parents' relationship, and I put that on my shoulders and I went, what have I done? I've ruined my family. I've ruined what I had. I had something good, or what I deemed good, and I said that and I felt distraught. And then my dad ended up leaving my mum, and then he ended up taking us. And I remember one day at the house, he went, I'm just going to nip out to the shops, and left me and my mum was staying at some other place. I think she's staying at the work. She worked in special needs and mental health. And yeah, so he said, I'm just going to go to the shops. I need to get some milk and some bread. So me and Hannah, my sister, were in the house, and I was 7 and she was 5. We didn't see him for ages. It was light when he left. It was dark when he got back. It was when he was still having an affair with that lady. I think her name was Sandra at the time. Well, it would have been Sandra. So he had an affair with her. Left me and my sister alone in the house. When it came to being in the house and it was bad weather and we're looking at these videos and talking about, like, maybe can we go to Australia? And my mum said, well, I'll have to check with your dad. And my dad said okay, but I only found out later on that the only reason why he said okay is so he didn't have to pay child support. He didn't want to pay that. And my mum agreed to it. And then we all went over, me, my mum and my sister went over to Perth, Western Australia, and that was a nice fresh breath of air. And it's nice being somewhere new for a change. And I thought my life was going to improve from there. But my goodness, things did not improve. I was severely bullied because I was different, and I would still try and run out and play amongst nature. And I had inter-school suspension. I had these two girls I think they were in the same year as me, or maybe a bit younger than me, who said that I'd done something which I hadn't done. I was innocent. Yeah, I'd done 3 days of inter-school suspension. I was sitting in the medic room, and I was sitting at this desk looking at this wall. I had to do my schoolwork, but I didn't because I couldn't read that well and I couldn't grasp it, so I didn't do it. I ended up just doing drawings and stuff. Anyway, 3 days later, the teacher, Mr. Bender, he came to me and said, "Oh, you can go now." I said, "Why?" He said, the girls told me that they made it up. It wasn't true." And guess what and you just said, "Oh, sorry about that." And guess what the girls got? Absolutely nothing. They were let off. Yeah. And I had to just go back to class. As someone who had inter-school suspension and people knew that I was in there, going back into a classroom and knowing that other people knew that you were there, it just labelled you as trouble, or it just isolated you in so many levels. Anyway, I got bullied there. I had things thrown at me. I was beaten up. I was bullied because I was English. I was bullied because I was different. And there's so many things I can't remember. I remember having to dance at school. I didn't want to dance, and I would get in trouble because I didn't get involved at school. Yeah, it's just hell. And then, to top it off, so I had no friends when I moved to Australia. No one would be friends with me. And my sister, who had a horrible life in England, was Miss Popular, and she alienated me and my mum. So when I was in England, I had a sister. When I came to Australia, I had no sister. I don't even consider I've got a sister these days. I think of my sister as someone that has passed away, and the person that I used to know is gone because of the way that she treats me and my mum. And to this day, I still get treated badly. The only time when I get called or she wants to know anything is when she needs help with something that I know about. So high school came around then, because I was held back a year for Australia. They're a bit slow over there when it comes to schools. I was told if I went to this other school in Forestfield, this high school, that if I went there they would kill me. And I had death threats on me. By the way, my mum had no idea about any of this. I didn't tell her about my mental health situation. I didn't tell her about my anxiety. I didn't tell her about self-harm or anything. And some of the things that I used to do, by the way, for self-harm is I used to whack my shins with a hammer. I mean a proper hammer, a metal hammer, and whack my shins, whack my knees, whack my legs, whack my arms, anywhere that couldn't be shown, by sleeves. Yeah, I would hit. And I used to wear trousers, and I still like wearing trousers. I don't like wearing shorts. And I used to hit my legs, and bruises and welts would come up. But because I could shower myself, and I would shower in private, my mum would never see that side of me. So I used to do that. I used to punch myself. I remember when I was in England still, I used to talk to my teddy bear. I used to get under my sheets, pull it over my head, sit in front of my teddy bear and talk to my teddy bear and say, about my day and how I feel bad about everything and where do I go, what do I do. So that was my only way of talking, was to a stuffed bear that couldn't talk back, but I would give it a voice and pretend like it was talking back, because it was the only thing that would listen to me. It was the only thing I could engage with and come up with something. And that, yeah, it might sound a bit crazy, but when you're so lonely and you feel isolated from everyone, you don't feel like you belong. When it came to going to high school, I went, can I go to this school up here? It's about 10 kilometres away. About a 20-minute drive or something like that, or maybe a 10-minute drive up the steep hill. And I ended up going there, and I thought that would be, all right, I won't get bullied, I'll have a new lease of life, it's a new start. Yeah, that didn't stop. I'm going to rattle through this because, I had, on occasions, the vice principal, her last name was Pike, and her first name began with an L. She threatened me with her husband, which is why my mum took me out of school. But when I was there at school, I was bullied there. I had people who I thought were friends who would beat me up. I had one guy that punched me he was into boxing, and he punched me right in the back of the head, right here where it can kill you, and I immediately swelled up, immediately. And I felt really dizzy, and we were on our way to PE, and I didn't tell anyone. No one would believe me. I was the troubled child, I was the naughty child, and no one had any compassion for me whatsoever about my situation. And I had people throw sawdust, friends of mine, chuck sawdust down my back doing woodwork and metal work as well, and just chucking all that stuff down my back and just doing it for their fun, their enjoyment. I remember just a couple of girls in my year who were sympathetic towards me. I remember there was a girl called Stephanie, and she was boyfriends with one of the bullies. And then there was also a girl called Karina. I can't remember her last name, but I kind of fancied them both. But I also was going, why are these people talking to me? I don't like this. And I was a very different person back then. So my demeanour back then, I wasn't the person I am today. When I was at high school, I was 46 kilos, 160 centimetres, and very skinny. My head, I would also keep my head down like this, very close. I never lifted my head up like this. It was always down like this. I'd always shrunk my shirt into my trousers, and I'd always, because that was the English way of life, you'd always tuck your shirt into your trousers, and it always looked odd, but it didn't feel right. I still tuck my shirt. I've got a vest underneath my shirts, so I can tuck something in and not have anything that's loose. So yeah, I was very different back then. But when I was at high school and I was getting bullied, I ended up, my mum, I got her to get some weights for me, and also a boxing bag. And I used to box this boxing bag. I never learned how to box, but I ended up going through about 3 boxing bags because I wore no gloves because I liked the feel of the pain, and also hardening up my knuckles and just laying into this boxing bag, laying, because of my aggression that I was getting from being bullied, and I wanted to be able to defend myself. So I do this. I remember trying to get strong, trying to bulk up. I couldn't. But what I used to do was 100 push-ups, and do that until I got to 100. I would do 100 pull-ups. I would do 200 sit-ups. Probably I can see why now I couldn't gain weight when I'm burning through all of that energy. So I used to do that, and yeah, and then I tried. I didn't know how to punch. I used to punch like that, like how a lot of people think they have to punch. But now I can, use my full body. I go through my legs and everything. I've never punched anyone, though I suspect if I did punch someone, I would cause some major injuries. I just hope that never ever happens. Because I don't know what would happen. Doing that, and I ended up doing some work for a family friend, doing some labouring work as well. That brought me some money in. But yeah, I remember bunking off of school. We had I can't remember. I think we had a free session, or no, I think it was the phys ed, or no, we had English or maths, and my friends, which were underachievers, let's say, and they were troublemakers, and I wasn't a troublemaker. I didn't want to be a part of them, but they were the only crowd that I could hang around with, and if I didn't hang around with them, they would beat me up anyway. So it was just like one of those situations where you've just got to go ahead and do this thing, because if you don't do this, then you'll just get beaten up by them anyway. And I got beaten up by them anyway on a daily basis. There was one time I went round to their house. I can't remember his name. Yeah, anyway, now he's doing like some kickboxing or something somewhere. But he was into drugs. I'm pretty sure he had ADHD, but I think he was also psychotic as well, because he would just lash out and he was into lifting weights. I remember him bragging about him lifting 10 kilo dumbbells, and there was me. I tried to lift a 10 kilo dumbbell and I couldn't do it. Now I can lift a 24 kilo dumbbell and I can curl that. If I was the strength that I was today, back then, things would have been different, but I probably would have ended up in prison or juvie or something, because I would have done something pretty bad. But anyway, I remember going around to his house. Oh no, he was called Jason, that's right. And I remember going around to his house, watching some WWE or something on the TV. And then my friend held me down. His name was Michael, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, it was Michael, because there was another friend called Andrew, but he didn't get involved. He was quite nice. And Michael held me down, and Jason just started laying into me on the sofa, just punching me all over my body, down my legs, up my arms. He avoided my head, and he just punched every single part of me. And I think he laid about 50 to maybe even 100 punches into me. I was aching, and I went to the school once and I dobbed them in for beating me up and everything, and they disowned me. And I said, well, you bullied me, you were abusing me. And they went, oh, that's what friends do. And then that's what I thought friends done. So yeah, but if you can, I had people in my year as well that would just take my school, because in Australia you put all your school bags out the front of the classroom. So I had people from another year take my bag. They would see it, they'd see me seeing it, I couldn't do anything about it. They'd grab my bag, they would run away with it, they'd throw it up a tree, they'd chuck stuff in the toilets. I remember, there's just so many things that went wrong, and so much abuse, and the school didn't care. I wasn't, I didn't tell my mum what was going on. Who am I going to tell? I'm the troubled one. I'm the member of the family who is troubled, who is the underachiever, who is worthless, who's got no, who's got no reason to have his voice heard, to be helped. I've got a sister who's Miss Popular. I've got a mum who's struggling to pay the bills and everything, and then she would offload to my aunties, and I would hear that still, and I was just like, and when I was in the house, my sister would have arguments with my mum, very severe. It wasn't until I left school and I learned about carpentry and joinery, I built myself a little studio out in the garden with no plans. I just visualised it in my head, put it together, because I learned carpentry and joinery. I learned it from doing a 6-month course, and I learned how to do everything. It survived really severe weather, and I built this patio as well. And I built it because I wanted to get away from my mum and my sister in the house. So that was my area of seclusion. But my sister used to listen to music up so loud, it rattled all the windows. She'd have a lock on her door. She was the trouble. She was so bad, but my mum would just, let her do so, because she didn't want her to because my sister was so aggressive. And then there was me, and if I got into trouble, it would be an added layer that my mum had to endure. When I got out of school, I had another problem there, but yeah, I ended up. That's how I left school. I had a problem at school. I was crying. I had a panic attack. I had a meltdown. I had to get out of school. So what I had done is I ran out the classroom. I jumped the 3 or 4 metre tall fence. I climbed up it. I jumped over it. I landed on the ground below. I think I twisted my ankle. And I ran to the front of the school. I sat next to a tap that was dripping and just watched it drip, and I was crying. The school found out that I'd broken the school rules and called my mum. They found me, they brought me in, they said, we're going to give you out of school suspension or into school suspension. No, I think it was out of school suspension. And this is when the vice principal threatened me with her husband, and my mum was there. And then as we were in the car park, me and my mum, she said, do you want to go back to school? I'm in year 11 at this point, I still had another year. And the only way I could not go back to school is if I went into education, if I went into a college course or a TAFE course. And she said, do you want to go back to school? I said, no, get me out of this place. And she went, you're not going back to school ever again. And then that's when we looked up courses, and that's when I looked at TAFE, and I wanted to do become an electrician. Second one was, I think, plumbing. But I ended up getting into carpentry and joinery instead, and that's when I just flourished. I was able to build stuff. I was able to use my skills and the way I learnt to the best. And I remember my teacher telling me at the end of the course that he said, I could see you being able to go into a building, strip it all down, and rebuild it without any plans, and see it in your head. And I went, yes, that's how I see it. I can see things in a 3-dimensional way, and strip things apart in my head, and work out where the problems are or likely to occur, and then improve on that so that problem doesn't occur, and then I can see a problem where when I improve that, then it's going to cause another problem, and then I work my way through. So that's how my brain works. And then I ended up going, I didn't fit in building a site, so I ended up going back to college, and I ended up studying computers and IT. I struggled on the maths and stuff, so I had to leave that. I couldn't really understand the computer side, but I could build computers. So that was easy enough, but I had to leave that. Then I went into doing mechanics. I understood mechanics. I actually started to stand up for myself and standing up for others. And I got actually the teacher in trouble for bunking off and leaving us and not pulling his weight. And I started to feel empowered, and I started to have a real energy going forth, because I don't stand for injustice. I don't stand for people being mistreated. I don't stand for, bullying in the workplace. If there's anyone who bullies another person, I stand up for them. I don't want someone to experience that pain, because I know what it feels like. I ended up not fitting in the workplace and stuff, and I always struggled. So I felt so much better when I was in the college environment, because it was stuff that I wanted to be there for. It wasn't the school environment where I struggled with and I didn't want to be there. And I could focus on the thing as well for like the same thing for the 6 hours or 7 hours versus school, which was like, by the time the teacher got there and you got all set up, it was like 45 minutes. But when I left school, I couldn't read or write. I learned how to read or write by joining a forum. It was called Per Street Bikes. One of my friends that I know to this day, Tim Simmons, he was the moderator on there, and me and him used to clash severely. Now me and him are friends, and it's fantastic. We joke about those days, but joining the forum is how I learned how to read and write, because people would criticise me back, saying you're not using the right terms and everything. And I realised I got to start another little times. Right, we're back, and so where were we? I just left school and I was going into education, and but where I also struggled is integration into the workplace, into society. I was still wanting to be my own thing. I tried to work in the workplaces, and where I always struggled was I learned about occupational health and safety. I worked in mine sites. I'd done fly-in, fly-out work. When I came back to, I'd done it fly-in, fly-out work doing ground geophysics. I was an assistant for that one. And I'd done that for about 4 or 5 months. It was hard work, good work, I enjoyed it. But it was just challenging dealing with the bosses and dealing with everything. Anyway, I learned all about like safety. It was all really drilled into me. I got a dogging and rigging license for cranes. I could operate a 10-ton crane and everything, and rig that load up, and all of those tickets have expired now. I've got so many tickets. I've got off-road recovery, driving quad bikes, putting out fires, lock holders. Yeah, there's a lot of things that I've done because of those jobs. And then when I came back to normal society after being in that work, the company that I used to work for was a kitchen company, or kitchen cleaning and industrial cleaning. And there were jobs that we walk into, there was a leading hand, and after about 3 months of being there, you were the new leading hand. Even though if you weren't qualified, they just labelled you as qualified, and then you had to teach the next person. So I was there for about 3 months, and then I started to be the leading hand. But before that, when they came to dodgy situations, we would work over deep fat fryers that was still in operation, and all we would put is this board across it and then our drop sheets. If that board slipped, we would put our foot directly into boiling deep fat fryer oil, which would have just, you can imagine what that would do. And but that was considered, we had to do it for the job, and we couldn't be an inconvenience on the kitchens. So we were working as some of the kitchens were cooking. We were up in the canopies and cleaning all the extraction fans. And I remember this one job we had this place had been cleaned multiple times by the same company I was working for, and I was a leading hand this day, and I had another person who was about my age, maybe younger. We ended up going into this job. We looked on the outside. We had to clean this exhaust fan that was on top of this corrugated roof, metal roof. I went up there and I looked at it and I'm going, well, this isn't structurally sound. If we slip or we fall, we could possibly go through. There's also no isolation point for the fan from the outside. So there's only a switch on the inside. If that switch was turned on, you'd lose fingers, it would chop into your hand and bone. It would be really bad. So I said, we're not going to clean that. I will let them know down below, the owners, that they need to reinforce the roof and also have a second isolation point, because I used my experience from that. We said, okay, we'll clean the canopy for you. We ended up cleaning the canopy, and then the person who was there with me, he was cleaning the inside of the canopy. There's sharp things, there's sharp screws and everything in there, which are hidden. You don't know about it. And he was just wiping it, and then it just went and it stripped his skin right through his finger down to the bone, and it just was bleeding. And I went, all right, well, I know senior first aid, I know about how to tackle this situation. So I went, all right, what we're going to do is we're going to get you over to this tap. We'll wash it out. We need to decontaminate it. And since my work didn't provide first aid kits in the car, or I think if they were expired, or they didn't have everything in there. So I asked the place where we were working in the kitchen, did they have a first aid kit? And they did. So I was able to clean the wound, disinfect the wound, seal it up. I told the kitchen staff and the employers that they should put like little rubber grommets on those screws to make sure those screws aren't as rigid or not as sharp, some silicone or something to make it less of a hazard. So I was talking about hazard prevention and hazard minimization. I ended up going back to the employer who I was working for, and I got a bollocking for it. And then I shouted at him because I said, well, I'd done a JSA, job safety analysis, and the job isn't safe, and I also let the customer know why it wasn't safe. And I had so much conflict there, and they had so much pressure. And there were other things, there's financial things that I won't go into, but so I had to have the job. So they knew that I had to keep doing it, but they were just making my life more and more hell. After multiple jobs, I ended up just leaving, and then my mum had to support me, and she looked after me for a number of years. Went back to England. I decided to pursue my photography, so I started doing that in 2012. I started taking photos at the track, doing the motorsports, so track days and also racing events, and to do cars and bikes. I started selling prints, and that learned and taught me about business. It taught me about customer service. It taught me about problem solving, working out, and also learning about photography and experimenting with my photography. But what I always had problems with is people screenshotting off my site, stealing photos, putting them on social media and saying, thanks, Simon. And then I said, well, I had no sales coming through. I'll get frustrated that I was going up there and trying to earn a living. And so I'm taking the pressure off my mum. And I've got these arrogant and self-righteous people that think that because I've taken this photo and it's on a website, they can take it for their own use. I had prices that were cheap, and people still didn't like that. So I ended up bumping my prices. As I got better with my photography, I bumped my prices up because I knew my self-worth. Anyway, ended up going back to England for a year. I'd done motorsports photography over there. I had fallouts with my family again. My Auntie E had tried to say that I need to do something realistic. I need to not focus on photography because photography isn't a realistic job. It isn't something that's going to earn me any money. It's not going to lead me to anywhere. And also my other Auntie E, M, agreed, and then things kicked off from there anyway. But look at me today. Maybe I didn't really earn what I wanted from my market. I knew if I stayed in England and I didn't come back to Australia after a year, I would have had a much bigger market and I would have pushed myself. But I was a ticking time bomb. And when I say taking time on, my mental health was just going downhill. It plateaued out a little bit, and then it just went downhill as soon as I left the college, and it just went down and down. Anyway, ended up doing my photography in England. I ended up making an impact. Some people that used to have their accreditation at the racetrack, I could no longer get it because my work was up there, and it was changing how other photographers were working, and other people who have been there for a long time were getting kicked. I was putting in the work, I was putting in the hours, and you might not succeed, or you might not succeed in the business, but if you put the mentality and you put the work in and you put the effort into it, and you're tenacious and you keep pushing and keep pushing and keep pushing and learning and evolving, then you can apply that in other areas. Anyway, came back to Australia in 2015. I ended up, I tried to get benefits back then, I couldn't. So I ended up working for a guy who hit me up again. His name was Stephen. I thought he was a nice guy. He used to be a bit of a dick back when I was a kid, when I was working for him. Turns out he was still a dick. And yeah, anyway, I think it was about 3 or 4 months later, and then about 4 months after getting employed by him, I had an accident which changed my life entirely, which is why I have back pain. And that's when I fell through a patio roof on a job. Fell from a total height of 4.5 meters, landed on my upper back. I was thankfully 54 kilos back then. I'm now 82 kilos. And if I was the weight that I am now, I would have died instantly at that scene. And I remember as I fell through this day, the previous day I'd been walking around on this patio. I removed all the old sheeting. I was walking on all the beams and everything, no problem. But on this particular day, I was walking around him. He was so stingy. He was such a tight bee with everything that he done. And if we had 2 boards along this roof, that would have saved it. But he only had 1 board. I walked around him, and I ended up falling through, and I ended up breaking my back. So I broke 6 ribs on my left hand side, all in a row, 1 inch from the spine, and I fractured the wing, transverse fractures from T4 to T9. I had my left lung had 3 holes in it. It was actually collapsed, and I was breathing into my chest cavity. I didn't realise until recently that if you breathe into your chest cavity, you can actually cause yourself to die because the heart gets compressed by the air, and I didn't know that. And but I thought I would be able to drive home from that one, but didn't. He said I was rushing, and when I go around after I got out of hospital, I think that when I was in hospital, I didn't want to be there. I was there for as minimal time as possible because I just pretended that I was better than I was, because I could hide pain, I could hide my emotions, I could pretend like I was actually better than I was. I ended up leaving the hospital after 3 days. I think I was meant to wear a brace and all this support and stuff, but if I was the person I am today, I would have stayed in hospital, I would have got the support and everything. I probably wouldn't be in the pain that I am today. I am in severe pain every single day. My back right now, if I were to rate it out of 10, would be a solid 9. It is very, very painful. It causes breathing difficulties as well. So I ended up having to sort of give up my photography, and I ended up, because I had to learn how to walk again. After the fall, I couldn't walk 5 meters, but I would persevere, and then I started to get on social media. It gave me something to work towards. I started doing gear reviews, I started to share posts, I started to help other people grow. It allowed me to have engagement with a community, and I would be on there for 18 hours a day from my bed and on my phone. It gave me purpose, and I started to learn about things, and I started to break down these things, like India, for instance, these stereotypes. So you think of India as like just call centres, and you don't think of anything else. It opened up my possibilities and my views, got rid of all the stereotypes, and I've spoken with so many people from India. I've spoken with so many people from all around the world. I've had seasoned professionals come up to me and ask for me advice. I've had people, when I started putting out about my mental health, I've had people talk to me about that. I've had people who talk about physical pain and physical challenges and talking to me. So I've gone from someone who was a nobody to someone who I guess I can say is like a public figure. I don't consider myself as an influencer. I wouldn't. That's like a stab in the gut sort of thing. I don't consider myself an influencer at all. I've got influence, but I'm not an influencer. When I was working with a guy, he wanted me to return back to work after 4 months, or 3 or 4 months, and the doctor said, yeah, you can return back to work and only do light duties. When you're working as a labourer in construction and renovations, there is no such thing as light work. I remember returning back to work, I was in absolute agony. I had to drive for 1 hour. It was agony driving my car to get to these places, then doing an 8-hour day. I remember painting once, my back was killing me. I couldn't hold the brush. And I was using rollers, I was climbing and moving beams and everything. And these are freshly broken ribs, and I had muscle damage, tissue damage, nerve damage. I've still got nerve damage. I've got pain that goes down my left arm. There's certain parts of my arm that don't really feel sensation like you normally feel it. Yeah, then I ended up wanting to really lay into my boss and because he would just belittle me. He would tell lies to his customers, and he'd say oh, he had a fall and he rushing, and then the customer would come to me, oh my, why did you do this, or why are you doing this? And then his mum, he lived with his mum, he still lives with his mum. He's got a wife and a kid now, I found out. I remember him actually saying about his wife, why do you like her? And he said, oh, she's a nurse, she can look after me, and she'll do. Nothing, I love her, she'll do. It's he was a very narcissistic and horrible human being, but I gave him a chance, and that chance is gone, and it's long gone. I'm never going to talk to that guy ever again, Stephen. That led me down a really dark path, and I remember coming out to my mum on her birthday. I wasn't working at the time, and I was so low, and I said to her, if I don't get help, I'm not going to be here by Christmas. I'm going to commit suicide. The way I was feeling inside after everything I've been through, the fall, the reset of my life, so many things have been taken away from me. Trying to get back to work, I was always thought of myself as a grunt worker. I never thought of myself as like someone who could work online or do what I'm currently doing or what I'm currently going towards. I never thought I was worth anything. I didn't think I could bring anything to people. I always wanted to do something, but I never knew how I could do that thing. Told my mum, and she got me the help as soon as possible. She got a diagnosis for autism, and I went to see a psychologist and a psychiatrist, which is what you need for the diagnosis for autism. Got that, and then I hit up that distraught me. That brought me to tears, and also shredded me and fell apart. I think if it were, and I got the diagnosis for autism, but I didn't get the diagnosis for like ADHD or anything, because back then I was a wreck. The only emotions I ever felt were anger and sadness. That was it. I felt nothing. I was a broken person, and I wanted to end my life. Anyway, got help. I rebuilt myself from the ground up. I had to basically strip everything away and focus on the person that I used to be when I was 4 years old, and then build everything going forth. I had to learn about friendships. I had to learn about, how to read people, how to connect with people. Everything you take for granted in society, in your life, I had to learn. I had to learn about facial expressions, because before, my face did not change. I had a monotone voice. And I think being on YouTube and talking on my stories has helped me have a much more defined voice. I've been able to improve on it because I hear myself and I know what it sounds like, and then I go to improve on that. And also moving my hands. I never really used to do that. I used to just sit like this and talk. But this just comes naturally to me. It's so easy. So because when it comes to portraying a message and it comes across to talking with your hands as well as talking with your voice and using different tonality in your voice brings across a different perspective. I've watched things online where people just use the same voice for the same thing, and they, you know, if you ask a question, you ask on a high, but when you're going to finish something, you end up on a low. I ended up getting the diagnosis, getting the help. I had an amazing support worker, Sandra Miller, at the Autism Association. She was fantastic. I worked with her, or she worked with me for about 2 hours, or 4 hours, or 6 hours each week on 2 different sessions for 4 years. I ended up getting involved in autism research. For 4 years I got my name on projects and everything that allowed me to get involved in the community and also learn about autism as well, because I was so angry with society after I got it, and I was starting to go with groups who were angry with other people, and I said, no, this is not the way. If you want to learn and evolve and help people, you don't go with people who are aggressive. You want to go with people who are like-minded, who are nice. So I ended up doing that. I ended up getting, long story short, I ended up getting screwed by that company at the university where I'd done some projects, and I got screwed because of this project. They promised me about, I was a part of a exhibition, and I was promised about $20,000. No contracts were written up or anything because I took their word for it. I just thought they treat me like family and friends. They're not going to screw me over. There were times when I was going, something doesn't feel right. And then it came to everything being ready for print. They even actually screwed up in my print lab, Fox Lab Fine Art, Tyson, yeah, I can't remember his last name, I think it's Foster. So they ended up screwing him over. He was actually sponsoring the event, and he gave a discount on the prints, and I actually added an extra 10% on for any additional costs, and actually covered the discount that he gave, which was fantastic. So they paid that. But I got this email back, and they gave me a price of $500. I said, you're absolutely joking. And then during the stages of that project, I had a fallout, and they wouldn't talk to me, and they would just ghost me. And I'm going, these are people who specialise in autism. This is a person who's highly respected in the autism research department, and she's the director of this thing. And she starts to not actually look after me. She starts to see me as a product and not as a person anymore. She loses that. And I just was like, what the hell is going on? And then I was labelled as the bad one, and I left. But what I've learned from that and other things over the years, and that's when I started getting into YouTube and making these videos and connecting and building my confidence and building my, and learning what I need to go moving forward. And I'm noticing trends in the market and finding out and using my abilities as a, you know, someone who's got ADHD, autism, dyslexia, and using it as my strengths now. So I started making my videos here on YouTube, and it's taught me a lot about confidence and presentation, how you talk, using, you know, my setup right now, using a slider over there, getting some footage there, lighting. You know, I've learned so much, and I got bigger ideas going forth. So what I want to do, so after those things, everything that I failed at, everything where life has been really hard for me, this year, now I'm in England on my own. I am going back to Australia. I'm going to go back there for business. This year I had a mental health crisis in July when I was going to commit suicide. I rang up a suicide hotline. I'm currently in the process of building up a photographic community and something that would help people with mental health as well. But I'm not in a good place anyway. But anyway, I started to build this up. It didn't go to plan. I was really stressed out about the trademark and everything getting all official. And I was just like, I'm a wreck of a human being. Why am I pursuing what I'm doing? So I rang the suicide hotline. I rang 2. The first one didn't work. They were not there, so I rang another one and spoke to them for about an hour. I was looking at some tablets in the kitchen that could have ended my life. And I was out there in the garden. I was crying. I was shaking. I was a wreck. I'm shaking like this. I'm going, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. And I'm just like, I'm back at where I was in 2017, and I was going, how do I survive? I've got no one. I don't know anyone. I knew a couple of people, but my family in England didn't care. I've got a cousin down in Chatham who I absolutely love. I haven't seen him that much, and I would love to connect with him. I'd love to support him with his business ventures going forth. That's why I want to become very successful, so I can help him out, so he can be the best he possibly can be, because I want everyone to be the best they possibly can be. So anyway, I ended up recovering and going forth, but what I have learned is no one can help me anymore. I'm beyond help. I have daily struggles with my mental health. I have suicidal thoughts almost every day. But what's going to make me go ahead and, and so I don't do well on my own. So I've got to be around people. I know I've got to keep busy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put everything I've got into my job, into my livelihood, and help people bring things together. I want to do exhibitions. I want to do talks. I want to allow people to share their story. I want people to feel inspired, empowered. I want to tackle mental health. I want to talk about it. I want to go on the grand stages and talk about my story. I want to talk about the impacts that society has got on people, because we're still in the infant stages of that. I want to talk about neurodiversities and how my life is compared to how people think it is, and if we can bring mental health as not as a thing that should be shunned away, talking about suicide and talking about self-harm, and not just like going, oh, that's bad, we shouldn't talk about that stuff. Bring it to the light. It's the way that you resolve situations. You resolve those challenges in your life. So once you talk about that and you make it a normality in life, then it's just like talking about the weather. So why not do that for like mental health? It just makes more sense to me. So I want to, build up this photographic community to support people, to empower people, focusing on mental health, focusing on all these different challenges, all different walks of life. I want to run events, as I said, exhibitions. I want to do moving exhibitions. I want to do TV shows. I want to do documentaries. I want to create about 20 different companies, because those 20 different companies will all encapsulate everything and bring everything, and also raise money. I'm going to do something that the government can't do, and I want to be that person. I want to link up with other people. I want to meet other people who are just as inspired and passionate about what they do and are finding challenges in the world, and we solve those challenges. I'm not doing it for the money. It's going to give me a sense of worth. It's going to make me feel happy. I'm not looking for relationships. I've tried that. I tried to do it this year, but I don't think relationships, a personal relationship with someone, an intimate relationship with someone, isn't for me. I'd much rather be friends with people, build up a rapport with people, and just see other people happy. That brings me joy. I don't get a joy out of materialistic things. It doesn't bring me any joy. I like nice things, but it doesn't mean I'm buying those things so I can, show off. I'm not a poser. I'm not a show off like that. So yeah, anyway, so going forth, I will be focusing on this. I'll be putting everything I've got. So if you wonder, why am I doing this thing? It's so that it gives me purpose in life. It gives me meaning and direction and support and happiness. Because if I don't do these things, if it doesn't work out, I'm leaving this world. I really am. I'm so broken. No one is going to be able to fix me. I mean it. No one is going to be able to fix me. So I need to do this for me and for everyone else. So anyway, I'm going to end this here. It's been a bit of a long one. I do apologise, but yeah, and I could have gone on for so much more. So yeah, I do hope you've enjoyed this video, and I'll see all of you in future ones and other events. If you see me in the field, come and say hi. Anyway, bye for now and take care.